Fundamentally speaking, it kind of scares me how I have not a lot of control over my feelings. But I suppose a big thing about self fucking acceptance and inner peace is realizing that a lot of things about life are out of our control. The country we're born into out of our control, the family we're born into out of our control, the actions of others out of our control. The state of the economy out of our control, the housing situation, housing crisis out of our control, and just the whole state of the world we were born into is inherently out of our control. But how inherently out of control most aspects of our life are. But that just means that the fucking things you can control about your life, they are, fundamentally speaking, they are so important. It's kind of like your attitude towards things, how you handle your finances, how you treat the people you love, how you just fucking spend the whole of your life. That is, fundamentally speaking, so fucking important. I haven't meditated in years. I stopped seeing the value in inner peace. And what I've really realized is that is something I want to achieve again. Well, I'm not going to lie to you and say I've ever actually achieved inner peace, but I feel like how I'm feeling right now is the closest I've ever got to it. And I don't ever want to be one of those people who will choose a superficial tool like money over people I love and care about. Money, having money does make life easier. If you have a lack of money, you're stressed, and financial poverty and financial stress is something I would never wish on anyone, because in the society that we've set up, you need money and finances as a way to get your basic needs covered. You're like your safety, having shelter, housing, all that. But some people, it scares me how many people that I've encountered and that I've met that they choose money over the people they love. And with stuff like that, I question, do they even love the people they claim they love? My mother, I don't like fucking speaking about that country because I feel like I want to move on. But I learned so many of my life lessons from her. In our family, she would slowly go through her side of the family and be like, who doesn't have kids? Which lonely family member has a property and they don't have family who visit them? Because the whole point is, in this fucking... She's a narcissist, which I've probably mentioned this before. I definitely have mentioned this before. But her whole thing was, when my kids become adults, how do I still keep control over their lives? Because obviously before we all fucking hit 18 or whatever, she had fucking control of us for housing. Well, I left before that or whatever because, I was taken away and started living with my aunt or whatever. But growing up, when my sister hit 18 or whatever, well, just because of how my sister is, my sister with autism, she wasn't going to be able to leave anyway, right? But my middle sister, which I call bitch, just because we have our relationship wasn't good, The way my mum kept control of her was she was building a house for, quote unquote, building her house. So my mum had this property, she's put a lot of money into building it up, and the reality is that's quote unquote her house, like my sister's house. But I genuinely think it's been 6 years since that house has been worked on. Has been progressively been worked on. And you can definitely, for the past 3 years, you could definitely live in that house. That house is in way, way, way better condition than my childhood home was. My childhood home was an absolute fucking cape. The amount of struggle meals I had in that house is not even funny. The living conditions non-existent. If on one of these days, I probably will just like post on my community tab, this is what my childhood room was looked like, this is what my, like, this is just a fucking photo of my house. You're gonna be fucking horrified. Like, absolutely horrified. Like, Jesus Christ. Genuinely worse conditions than a fucking favela back in Brazil. Like, you know, like, genuinely shocking altogether. You know, I'm being dead serious. Like, I'm not even fucking joking. I'm being dead fucking serious. Like, and so every time I'm going up to a certain city, I pass my house and I see my sister's car still outside. She's still living with my mum. Even though that quote-unquote house is hers, she's still living with my mum. Because my mum's using that house as a ploy to keep my sister at home. You know, because it's to avoid her from actually moving out and getting her own place. And then so it's just, she wants to keep the narcissistic supply. So, because my mother knew my autistic sister was always going to stay with her, you know, and it fucks my head because she's such a lovely, sweet fucking person, you know, and I did my part. I tried, you know, I messaged her to check if she was okay. My mum ended up showing up to my workplace. I've given up, you know, like, listen, agencies tried to help her. I tried to help her. And you know what? There's this phrase, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. And I've fucking given up. You know, I don't give a fuck. You know, even with how shitty that makes me feel, and even with how sad that makes me feel, she's made a decision to stay with my mum, she can fucking stay there. You know, and I know that might inherently sound really disrespectful, but at the end of the day, even with everything my mum has did to me, she's chosen my mum's side. You know, that's how I fucking view it. You know, and the plan was, so my sister was getting her house built, right? And she quote unquote has the house. I don't think she's even gonna get it. She might have a chance to get it when my mum dies, but that's like willingly fucking accepting around like 50 plus years of abuse for like a house. Honestly, even with this economy and even with the housing crisis, I don't think that's worth it. To be honest with you, just keeping it fucking real out here, but... And then my mum's plan was to have 3 houses for all of us. So my sister bitch, the middle one, she's checked off that list, quote unquote, she has a house, but she ain't never getting that. Me, my mum would genuinely say to me, oh yeah, I'm going visiting this relative. That's going to be your house, Nisha. She was regularly visiting like every Sunday or Monday whenever she was free to this relative who didn't have any kids, who didn't have any family, who was going to visit her, to quote unquote inherit that house to give it to me. Did she seriously think I was stupid enough to fall into the ploy my sister did? You know? And the worst part is, the quote unquote house my autistic sister was going to get, it was the fucking house, my childhood house. The one in such shitty fucking conditions, which wasn't even in a town. My autistic sister, I don't think she's ever going to be able to drive. You know? She was going to leave her in the fucking slum. You know? And honestly, I don't know what's going to happen when my mum dies. And that kind of horrifies me, you know, because I know my sister bitch is not going to take care of my autistic sister. And I ain't willing to either. You know. I would be, but I'm not going to take care of someone who is so far gone they see good in my mother. You know, and I'm not going to take care of someone who is so broken they're clinging on to an evil person for any sense of warmth. You know, and it makes me really sad, because honestly, she has a better heart than I will ever have. You know, and so people consider me a good person, but my autistic sister, she has a way better heart than I do. You know, like, I'm not saying I'm an evil cunt or anything along those lines. Like, I am a quote unquote decent person sometimes, but my mother run. You know, out of the three of her kids, I was the only one that got away. You know, and there's a certain level of irony in that because my two sisters are older than me by a couple of years. You know, but it's, yeah. I don't know how my sister bitch is still there though, because she makes her own money. She has a car. You know, but she's willingly choosing to stay there, and that's insane. You know, you genuinely could have given me the options, like, Nisha, we gotta cut off the two of your legs and you gotta be in the wheelchair for the rest of your life, or you gotta stay at your mum's. I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna do fucking wheelies around the place. You know, not to make fun of anyone with, like, fucking disabilities or anything like that, you know, but I'm just, like, putting into perspective, you know. You know, either way, I'm gonna leave it here. Bye-bye. Miss Brigette's leaving.